The drama surrounding McBee Dynasty patriarch Steve McBee Sr. has taken yet another turn. Once a familiar face on the family's reality series, Steve Sr. has been noticeably absent from season 2 while battling serious legal trouble off-screen. Now, a federal court has ordered him to surrender some of his personal assets, adding to the already heavy weight of his crop insurance fraud case. Steve Sr., father of 4, was charged with defrauding the federal crop insurance program, an offense that carries a potential 30-year prison sentence. Prosecutors say he wrongfully received more than $3 million in benefits. Though sentencing has been repeatedly delayed, the case continues to move forward, and the latest development involves the forfeiture of high-end luxury items. This move marks a significant moment in a case that has kept fans, critics, and legal observers talking for months. What the court documents reveal. According to court documents, the United States has located assets belonging to the defendant Steve A. McBee that were not directly obtained through the offenses alleged in the information. That means property Steve acquired legitimately, purchased with his own funds, can still be seized to help pay what he owes. The distinction here is important. Authorities are not only focused on funds tied directly to fraud, but also on legitimate purchases that can offset the millions in question. Among the items the government is taking are 3 designer watches, a Tag Heuer Formula 1, a Tag Heuer Grand Carrera, and a Rolex Daytona. While it's unclear how many timepieces McBee actually owns, Tag Heuer models typically retail in the $2,000 $6,000 range, while a Rolex Daytona can be worth far more. For collectors, these watches symbolize wealth and exclusivity, but for Steve Sr., they now represent part of his debt repayment. Fans react to the asset seizure. Interestingly, vehicles such as his reported luxury cars were not included. That prompted backlash from some observers, who questioned why relatively modest assets like watches were seized instead of high-value items like his G-Wagon. One critic voiced frustration online, writing, "So the government is taking a $2,000 to $5,000 Tag Heuer watch instead of a $200,000 G-Wagon or other $100,000 vehicles. I'm tired of this family saying one mistake when it happened in multiple years to multiple parties. What a wealthy person will do to become richer is just amazing. Karma is a bitch. 30 years to think about what a fool does for $. The strong reaction reflects how the case has struck a chord with viewers who once watched the McBee family navigate farm life and family struggles on television. For many, the fall of Steve Sr. feels like a betrayal of the values the show once presented. Sentencing still ahead. For now, the former reality star's sentencing has once again been pushed back, from its original date in June 2025 to September, and now to October 2025. Each delay leaves followers speculating about how the final outcome will reshape the McBee family's future. With the possibility of decades behind bars, millions in repayment, and the forced surrender of luxury possessions, the next few months will be critical for Steve McBee Sr. and his legacy both on and off screen. The Missouri sun glared off the chrome grille of a blacked-out Mercedes G-Wagon, parked conspicuously at the edge of the sprawling McBee ranch. Dust curled in lazy spirals around its tires, as if the land itself rejected its presence, too polished, too pristine for the legacy of soil and sweat it had grown used to. Inside the once glorious McBee estate, a silence hung thick in the air, broken only by the ticking of an antique grandfather clock and the muffled static of a muted television looping reruns of McBee Dynasty, Season 1. On the screen, Steve McBee Sr. beamed proudly next to his 4 sons, shirt collar starched, smiles wide, standing in front of the same G-Wagon that now idled in disgrace. But those were different times, before the fall, before the headlines, before the clocks began counting backward on the McBee legacy. The fall of the patriarch. Steve McBee Sr. once ruled over the McBee Ranch like a monarch, stoic, strong-jawed, silver-haired, and always in control. Cameras followed him through sun-drenched fields, boardroom battles, and fireside family meetings as if he were America's last true patriarch, a rugged blend of cowboy grit and corporate savvy. But now his empire teetered on the edge of ruin. The federal crop insurance fraud case had started as whispers. A rumor here, an accusation there. But like a Missouri storm, it gathered force with terrifying speed. Prosecutors alleged he'd siphoned over $3 million through false claims and doctored reports. What was once a proud American farming story had become a cautionary tale of greed in a Gucci belt. And worse than the charges, was the shame. The betrayal his family felt, the betrayal his fans endured. The watches that told too much. On a Monday morning in September, a U.S. Marshal arrived with a warrant, not for the land, not even for the prized livestock or vehicles, but for time itself, embodied in 3 luxury watches that once adorned Steve Sr.'s wrist like battle medals. The Tag Heuer Formula 1, a sleek steel piece with red accents, had been a gift to himself after the first season aired. The Tag Heuer Grand Carrera, elegant and heavier, marked the birth of his first grandchild, and the Rolex Daytona, rare and ostentatious, was whispered to be a silent middle finger to the doubters in his life, the men in suits who never thought a farmer could reach the Forbes list. Now they sat, stripped from velvet boxes, glinting coldly in an evidence bag. Irony dripped from the scene. The very items built to mark achievement now signaled downfall. Timepieces meant to measure success were now inventoried to repay a fraud. A twisted poetry. The G-Wagon mystery. Outside, the G-Wagon remained untouched, an enigma. Fans erupted online in rage and ridicule. Why take watches and not the $200,000 car? Who's protecting this man? One furious commenter posted, the tweet going viral within hours. Those watches aren't just accessories, they're symbols. He wore them like armor while stealing from the government, another argued. Theories swirled. Perhaps the vehicles were in his wife's name. Perhaps the G-Wagon was leased. Or maybe the feds were saving the bigger hits for sentencing. But in a world obsessed with optics, the public didn't care for nuance. They wanted retribution, and something flashier than a watch to make it feel real. The family fractures. Behind the cameras, away from federal paperwork and internet rage, the McBee household was fracturing like dry earth in a drought. His eldest son Jesse had taken over day-to-day operations of the farm, but a storm brewed between the siblings. One wanted to sell off land to repay debts and rebrand. Another wanted to fight, to restore their father's name at any cost. A third stayed silent, hoping the cameras never found him again. And the youngest, once his father's shadow, had gone to Nashville, trading tractors for a guitar, trying to turn heartbreak into country songs. Their mother, once the silent pillar of the family, filed for legal separation in August. I loved the man he was. I don't know who he became, she told a close friend in a private email later leaked to the press. The once immovable McBee Dynasty was splintering from the inside. The clocks keep ticking. As sentencing delayed again, first from June to September, now to October, the world outside waited, watched, judged. Speculation ran rampant. Would Steve Sr. get the full 30 years? Would a plea deal emerge at the last hour? Would his sons visit him in prison, or disown him like a bad memory? In a small corner of the ranch house, away from the prying eyes of law and media, Steve Sr. sat at his old desk. In front of him lay 3 empty watch boxes, dust beginning to settle inside them like the first snowfall of a long winter. He stared at a 4th box, unopened. Inside was a Patek Philippe Calatrava, a watch he'd purchased years ago but never worn. It had been meant for Jesse, to give him when he took over the family business for real. A quiet heirloom gesture, a symbol of succession. Now, Steve opened the box slowly and placed the watch on the desk, sliding a note beside it. "Time doesn't forgive, son, but sometimes it teaches. Do better than I did." A dynasty rewritten. In October, the sentencing finally came. Steve McBee Sr. stood before the judge, wearing a plain navy suit. No watch on his wrist, no family behind him in the pews. Just silence and the sound of keys jangling behind the courtroom door. He was sentenced to 14 years, with parole eligibility after 8. The courtroom buzzed with shock, not because it was too harsh, but because it was real. It happened. The mighty had fallen. But America loves a good fall, almost as much as it loves a comeback. Already, rumors swirled about a new spin-off show, McBee Redemption. Cameras were said to be following Jesse, who had launched a transparency-based farming initiative. Nashville fans streamed the youngest brother's song, Daddy's Rolex, in record numbers. Time moved on, as it always does. Epilogue, the final tick. Years later, long after the dust settled and the show's ratings plateaued, a visitor came to the ranch. It was Jesse, now graying at the temples, a quiet man with the weight of legacy in his voice. He entered his father's old study, untouched since the day of sentencing. The grandfather clock still ticked. On the desk lay the unopened Patek Philippe box, untouched all these years. Jesse smiled, picked it up, and slid the watch on his wrist. "All right, old man," he whispered. "Let's keep time honest from here on out."